In this video we're talking about shifting and windowing. Here we are plotting again the data that we're working with, which is again taken from the stock data. And before we go through the code, it's probably best to just look at the plots. So in the first plot we can see the original data, and then in the second plot we can see that the data is shifted. So for example, this small hill in 2010 is now in 2011. And this shift is achieved by calling the dot shift and then with the number of days or years that we want to shift with. And so here we're choosing 1 year or 365 days. And so the data is shifted to the right. If we would do minus 365, then we would shift to the left. Another option is to shift the index. And that's what happens in the third plot. So we see the data looks the same. There's nothing cut off at the end and also no missing values added in the front. So it's really just the same data, except that the index is shifted. So here we call the index, then on the index the dot shift, we pass the number of days, and then we use that to overwrite the original index. And that causes the index to shift by 1 year. So instead of 2010, we have here 2011. And again, what's important for this shift is that the data is actually changed. So because we are shifting data forwards in time, while the indices stay consistent, that means some of the data gets lost in the future. And also the data from the origin of our time index has moved on, so that's why we have here missing values. And this shifting can be useful to calculate differences. So we write here the original data and then we subtract from that a shifted version and we can plot that, and that's how we compare differences across time. Because this is such a common application, Pandas also provides a dedicated function for that, which is the diff. And to the diff we pass the periods argument, and that means we calculate the difference from one data point to the next one. We could also set that to 2, then we would calculate the difference from one data point to the second next one. Next up we have window functions, and these work similar to group by, so they split the data into groups, and on these groups we can then call aggregation functions. So for example, here's again our data, and we create a rolling window of size 365 days, and on this window we calculate the mean. So you can imagine that here we have a window going from 0 to 365 days, and then based on this window, so all the values that are in this window, we calculate the mean. And the position of that mean value is to the right side of the window. So that's why our orange line starts here. And so as the window moves, so we move 1 to the right, meaning we forget one old value and we get one new value, and based on that we again calculate the mean, and this gives us the next value in this orange line. And so we do that until we roll through our whole data. If we don't want the aggregated mean to be at the right side of the window, we can also pass the center argument and set it to true. And in that case the orange line will not start at the right side of the window but in the middle. Finally, we have expanding windows. And as the title says, now our windows are not of a fixed size, but they keep expanding. And so we specify a minimum window size, here 365 days, which is again this window here. And then starting from this window, we calculate the mean that gives us that value, but then instead of sliding the window, we expand the window. And so for every expansion, we again calculate the mean. And that gives us then this line here. And we can see that the orange line is not going up, because at this point here, for example, we're not just considering this window here, but also all the previous values, since the window expanded from the beginning up until here. If we want the past not to have such a great effect, we can use exponentially weighted windows. And that means more recent data points have an exponentially higher weighting. So we're kind of forgetting the older values and are more interested in the recent values. And that gives us then this line here.